Today, EPISD is likely going to put a bond north of $400 million to voters this November. Just weeks after the district declared financial exigency, a form of bankruptcy for public school districts, the elephant in the room now is whether the district can garner enough trust from voters to win support for the ballot item this fall. Elsewhere in El Paso's education system, Isleta Independent School District just approved a budget that virtually wipes out the district's savings balance and leaves the district with almost no room for financial error. And while the district superintendent has said YISD will avoid the kind of layoffs EPISD recently implemented, the district will likely still see a reduction in force next school year. Meanwhile, Socorro Independent School District expects a budget surplus for the upcoming year, and the district could exit state conservatorship next month. In just a moment, I'll speak with El Paso Matters education reporter Claudia Silva to talk through the conditions at each of El Paso's 3 largest school districts, which are all beleaguered to some extent at the moment, and what to expect at each district in the near future. First, this El Paso Matters podcast episode is brought to you by our podcast title sponsor, Tani Acosta Chaparro, Truck Crash and Injury Attorneys. Their team of local, seasoned trial attorneys are ready to help if you've been injured in a crash. And you can read our free reporting or sign up for our newsletter at our website, elpasomatters.org. On to the rest of the show. Claudia, good to be with you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It seems like we've been talking a lot about education-related stuff, so thanks for taking the time. I know a lot going on. So you wrote this week about EPISD's plans for a bond election this November. Can you just kind of talk through the district's plan and what it wants to use new funds for?
Yeah, well, I just want to say it's still always a pleasure to inform people about what's going on with the districts, even though things have been really hectic right now. But yeah, let's talk about EPISD. So I guess before we start talking about an actual bond, I think the first thing that we should maybe go over is this new long-range master plan that was presented around the same time as this bond proposal. So what the long-range master plan is essentially it's the district's long-term plan for any renovations and improvements that it needs to make in the coming years. And this plan was actually developed by a series of committees and subcommittees that are made by, citizens, residents, parents. There's some school employees and union members. So they all got together and, talked about different aspects of the district that they think need improvement. And they put this vote. And with all that information that they gathered and a lot of data that the district gathered about the resources in the different areas of the schools are and the conditions of the actual campuses, they came up with a long-range master plan that is worth a total of $1 billion. In that plan, I think the 2 largest portions are air conditioning or HVAC, so heating and cooling. And for the long-range master plan, that would cost about $133 million. And the actual really big chunk of that is deferred maintenance, which is basically maintenance that's been put off. So if there's been any repairs needed or anything that's broken that the district just hasn't had money to fix, that's where that kind of goes. And the district calculated that it has about almost $470 in deferred maintenance needs. So that's basically the vast majority of that $1 billion, almost half of that $1 billion long-range master plan. In the plan is also the inclusion of some smaller things, like installing solar panels in 13 schools, adding green spaces throughout the campuses, new IT infrastructure and cybersecurity. They've also been talking about rebuilding Bliss Elementary, which was something that was from the 2016 bond. So what was actually presented as far as a bond earlier this week was actually just a draft. So this isn't an official proposal. This is just to give an idea of what a bond could look like. So the bond, it was separated into 3 pieces, and it totaled $445 million. So even though the district identified $1 billion in needs, they're only going to go after a portion of that. And so it's broken into 3 pieces. The first, the huge, largest piece is about $410 million. And that is to address cooling systems, some of the most dire deferred maintenance needs, installing solar panels at 4 schools, and just kind of general improvements throughout the districts. There's making the playgrounds better, more green spaces, things that will improve the student experience, like adding water fountains and water refill stations. So just general things like that. The second would be about $10 million, and it's an ask to purchase technology devices for teachers and students. That one's a little bit controversial because there's some people that don't think it's a good idea to, get into debt essentially to purchase equipment that's going to be outdated in a few years. So that's its own proposition on its own. And then the last one is $25 million to renovate athletic stadiums. So these are just the ones that are like used for big games. And that's essentially what the draft is. We should know sometime in early August or even within the next few weeks in July what the official proposal is going to be. The district, I think their goal is to keep the tax rate the same, so that's the exact number that they're going to look for. David Bates, the deputy superintendent, he told me that could be anywhere between $430 to about $450 million. But one thing I think is important to know when we talk about the tax rate is they are, trying to keep the tax rate the same, but that doesn't necessarily mean taxes won't increase. Some homeowners may see an increase just because property valuations have been going up. But another thing to remind people is that there are still a significant amount of people in El Paso that wouldn't be affected by this, usually like seniors and disabled veterans. A lot of times their school property taxes are frozen. So it's pretty complicated when you look into it, but bottom line, tax rate is going to stay the same, but a few people's tax bills for the district could go up.
All really good information. Appreciate that, Claudia, and kind of breaking down the different buckets, I guess, that they're seeking funding for. You've done a lot of reporting recently on EPISD declaring financial exigency, basically discovering a budget blow-up, right, that apparently had been withheld from the Board of Trustees by some of the senior administrators at EPISD. And so EPISD, all right, in the middle of a big budget crisis, they just had to lay off 55 employees. A couple of the trustees on the board resigned. So EPISD's going through some tough financial times, right? And even still, there's still pretty strong support for EPISD's bond among different community groups that have been advocating for this for a while, particularly around like installing new HVAC units. And so I just wonder if you can talk about how some of the community organizing groups are pushing the bond and why.
Yeah. Well, one thing to mention is, the last time that there was a bond approved by voters, it was in 2016. And that bond primarily focused on, additions to the high schools and making renovations there. And it also consolidated a few elementary and middle schools and basically combined them into this, pre-K through 8 campuses. But that actually left a lot of schools, mainly elementary schools, without a lot of updates. So I think that was, one of the main things that people are wanting is they're seeing that we have still a lot of schools that weren't touched by the 2016 bond, and people want to start seeing improvements there. One of the organizations that has been in support of a bond for a couple of years now is the Amanaced People's Project. So they launched what they call the Escuelas Frescas campaign in 2024. And basically what they did is they went around and they talked to parents that, went to different campuses and tried to just get information on what they could. And they found that there were several dozen elementary schools that just didn't have adequate air conditioning. A lot of them were running on, I think, what we would call swamp coolers or evaporative air. And a lot of those just aren't as, they don't really work as well whenever the temperatures are really high. And another problem is that there's now requirements where all classrooms have to close their doors. And the way with those air conditioning systems work, if you don't have, doors open or some form of airflow, they're basically just completely ineffective. So that's kind of what they ended up finding. And since then, they've been, pushing and looking for different ways that the district can get different air conditioning. The other group that has shown support for the bond has been Familias Unidas por la Educación. They are a grassroots advocacy group from the Chamizal neighborhood in South Central El Paso. And they have been very vocal against, the closures of schools that happened under, previous leadership. And one thing that they're really supporting is under the long-range master plan and potentially the bond, and still hasn't been fully clarified, is they're talking about reopening some of the closed schools that were closed through the 2016 bond and turn them into pre-K centers. And I think the purpose of that is really to try to get more people to enroll. And after talking to some people that live in the neighborhood, they actually feel that there are a lot of parents that have young children that could qualify to go to pre-K or kindergarten, and they just haven't been enrolled for whatever reason. So they're hoping that reopening this center will, give students access to education, and the district, I think, is hoping to get more enrollment from that.
Yeah, and maybe breathe some life into the campuses that have been defunct.
Essentially, yeah.